In the quiet town of Makola, where morning light spills over rusted rooftops and the air smells of wood smoke, a small, one-room apartment hummed with laughter. Inside, Ademola and Morayo danced clumsily, their cramped space a kingdom of love. Their table wobbled, their mattress sagged, but to them, it was home. Ademola, a mechanic with calloused hands, tightened his worn belt. Morayo, graceful and gentle, adjusted her wrapper, her smile a beacon in the dim room. Ademola, you forgot your lunch, she'd say, holding up a small bag. He'd chuckle, how could I forget, when you pack it with love every day? Their laughter was the soft, easy kind, born from peace, not wealth. Their son, 5-year-old Tobi, would run in, sleepy-eyed and hungry. Morayo would scoop him up, whispering, "You'll eat, my sunshine." Ademola would watch them, his heart swelling with a love so profound it felt like the only treasure he'd ever need. They had each other, and for a while, that was enough. But one humid night, everything changed. Morayo woke to find Tobi burning with fever, his small body trembling. Panic seized her. Ademola, wake up. In minutes, they were racing through the dark, muddy streets, rain pounding down as they rushed towards the clinic. Hours felt like an eternity. Finally, the doctor emerged, his face grave. "Your son needs urgent surgery, appendicitis. He won't make it without it." Morayo's legs felt weak. "Please, doctor, how much?" The answer struck them like a physical blow. 3 million naira. "And we must operate within 96 hours. Ademola swallowed hard, his throat dry. "We don't have that kind of money, doctor. Can't you start?" "We can pay gradually." The doctor shook his head, his voice full of regret. "I'm sorry. We can't proceed without the full amount." Outside, thunder echoed their despair. Ademola turned to Morayo, his jaw trembling. "I'll find it," he whispered, a promise born of desperation. "I swear to you, Morayo, I'll find that money." The next morning, Ademola's boss, Mr. Karim, found him looking broken. After hearing the story, he offered a glimmer of hope. "I have a project outside town. I can take you along. You'll earn extra, maybe enough to start something." Grateful, Ademola accepted immediately. He hugged Morayo and Tobi tightly before leaving. "Take care of him, my love." "I'll come back with the money." She forced a smile, tears streaming down her face. "God go with you," but fate had a cruel twist in store. During the trip, pickpockets stole Ademola's bag, and with it, his phone, his meager savings, and every contact he had. Panic washed over him. He couldn't even remember Morayo's number to call for help. Trapped and alone, Ademola worked relentlessly. Under the blazing sun, he carried cement bags twice his size. At night, he washed cars and cleaned gutters for a few extra naira. His palms cracked and bled, his back screamed in protest, but the image of Tobi's pale face and Morayo's tears pushed him onward. "I can't fail them," he'd mutter to himself over and over. "I must not fail them." He was a man racing against time, but the money he earned was a mere trickle against the flood of their needs. The clock was ticking, each second a hammer blow against his heart. Back in Makola, Morayo was living her own nightmare. Tobi grew weaker with each passing day. The doctor's calls became more frequent, his tone more urgent. "Madam, this delay can kill him." At the market, her hand shook so badly she could barely sell her wares. Whispers followed her through the stalls, cruel rumors that her husband had abandoned her. But she held onto a fragile thread of faith, believing Ademola would return. Then, one afternoon, a shiny black SUV pulled up beside her stall. A man stepped out, dressed in a crisp white suit and dark sunglasses. It was Chief Olalikan, a wealthy businessman known for his arrogance and his wandering eye. He had noticed Morayo before, her quiet beauty a stark contrast to his loud world. He walked towards her, a predatory smile on his face, oblivious to the storm raging in her heart. He saw a beautiful woman at a market stall. He didn't see a mother fighting for her child's life. He didn't see the despair behind her eyes, the silent screams for a miracle. For Morayo, the arrival of this man felt like the final, crushing wave in a sea of sorrow, threatening to drown what little hope she had left. What choice did she have, with her son's life hanging by a thread and her husband lost somewhere in the world? Her nightmare was just beginning. Morayo, he said smoothly, his voice cutting through the market noise, "I've been looking for you." She didn't have to turn to know who it was. Chief Olalikan. She frowned, trying to dismiss him. "I told you before, I'm not interested in your nonsense." He just smirked, that arrogant glint in his eyes. "You should be. I heard your son is sick. I can help you." Morayo started to walk away, but his next words froze her in her tracks. 3 million naira, he said, his voice a low, predatory hum. "Spend 3 nights with me. You'll have it." Morayo's stomach churned with disgust. "You're disgusting," she spat out, her voice trembling with rage. "Or desperate," he countered, coolly slipping his business card onto her table. "Call me when you're done pretending pride can save your son." His words echoed in her mind long after he was gone, each one a venomous sting. That night, the darkness of her small room felt suffocating. She sat beside Tobi's bed, watching the old lamp flicker, casting weak, dancing shadows over his fragile little body. His breathing was so shallow, his skin clammy to the touch. He stirred, his eyes fluttering open. "Mama," he whispered, his voice barely audible. "Is Daddy coming soon?" Her own voice broke as she answered, "Yes, baby." Soon, she pressed his tiny hand against her cheek, trying to absorb some of his warmth, trying to give him some of her strength. But fear was a cold, creeping thing. What if Ademola doesn't come in time? What if I lose him? The thought was a physical blow. Tears streamed down her face as she prayed, begging God, the universe, anyone, for another way. But the silence that answered was heavy and absolute. The next morning, the sun rose on her despair. Chief Olalikan's card sat on the table, mocking her. For hours, she just stared at it, the crisp white rectangle representing both her salvation and her damnation. Her son's weak cough from the other room was the final push. Her hand shaking, she finally dialed the number. The evening air around Chief Olalikan's mansion was heavy, thick with the cloying scent of perfume and money. It felt like a different world. Morayo stood at the massive gate, her head lowered, her heart pounding so hard it physically hurt. He opened the door himself, that same triumphant smirk on his face. "So, you've decided." Her voice came out as a barely there whisper. 3 million. That's all I need. Then I'll leave. Of course, he said, his eyes roaming over her in a way that made her skin crawl. After 3 nights, her stomach twisted into a tight, painful knot, but she nodded. She repeated it to herself like a mantra, a prayer. "This is for Tobi, my child, my blood, my everything." When it was over, she stood under the searing hot water of the shower, scrubbing her skin until it was raw and red. But she didn't feel clean. She didn't feel human. The only thing she felt was a hollow, gut-wrenching relief when Chief Olalikan handed her the envelope full of cash. "You're stronger than most women," he said smugly, as if offering a compliment. Morayo said nothing. She couldn't find her voice. She just walked away in silence, the envelope clutched tightly in her trembling hand, each banknote feeling like a ton of bricks. At dawn, she ran straight to the hospital, her feet barely touching the ground. Her hands shook uncontrollably as she gave the doctor the money. "Please," she whispered, her voice cracking, "save my son." The doctor, a kind-faced woman, nodded gently. "We'll prepare for surgery immediately." The moment the words left the doctor's mouth, Morayo's legs gave out. She sank to her knees right there in the sterile corridor, crying silent, racking sobs. It's over. He'll live. But fate, it seemed, wasn't finished with her yet. As Morayo watched the nurses wheel Tobi toward the operating room, a familiar voice echoed down the long, empty corridor. Morayo, she turned, and the world stopped. Ademola, she breathed. Ademola looked exhausted. His shirt was torn, his face covered in dust, but his smile was the widest she had ever seen. "I did it," he shouted, rushing towards her. "I got the money. My boss helped me." 3 million naira. Her lips trembled. She couldn't form a complete thought. You have the money." "Yes," he said, his face beaming with pride and relief. "Now our boy will live." The dam inside her broke. The tears she thought she had cried out finally spilled over. "Ademola, I already paid." His triumphant smile vanished in an instant. "You what? I already paid for the surgery." He froze, pure confusion flooding his face. "Morayo, how? Where did you get that kind of money?" Her chest tightened until she could barely breathe. She wanted to lie to say a relative helped or a miracle happened. But the truth was a wild animal clawing at her throat, and it burst out before she could stop it. "I went to Chief Olalikin." The name hung in the air between them like poison smoke. Ademola blinked slowly, as if he couldn't process the words. "Chief Olalikin, the man who's been after you." She couldn't meet his eyes, staring instead at a crack in the floor tiles. "Morayo," his voice cracked, filled with a dawning horror. "Tell me you didn't." Her tears fell like rain. "I did it for Tobi. I had no choice." Ademola staggered back as if he'd been physically struck. "You sold yourself for me, for him. I did it to save his life." She cried, her voice raw with anguish. Ademola's fists clenched at his sides. Anger, heartbreak, and devastation warred on his face. "I worked, Morayo. I begged. I was almost there. You were gone." She sobbed, the desperation of the past few days overwhelming her. "I called Burr. I couldn't reach you. I thought you couldn't get the huge amount." He turned away from her, his shoulders slumped, and she could see the glisten of tears in his eyes. "You should have trusted me," he said, his voice thick with pain. "I trusted love," she whispered to his back. And love demanded too much. After the surgery, Tobi recovered slowly. The doctors called it a miracle. But at home, a chilling silence replaced the laughter and warmth that once filled their small room. The air grew cold and heavy. Ademola avoided Morayo's eyes. He ate in silence. He slept with his back to her, a wide, uncrossable chasm between them. She tried to talk to him, to apologize, to explain, but words felt meaningless against the weight of what had happened. One night, she couldn't bear the silence any longer. "Ademola, please," she said softly into the darkness. "Say something." He stared at the ceiling for a long time before he spoke. "What do you want me to say? That I forgive you?" "I can't even forgive myself." Tears rolled down her cheeks, hot against the cold pillow. "I lost my dignity, Ademola. I can't live with that." Adewale finally turned to look at her, his eyes hollow in the moonlight. "Do you think I can live knowing my wife had to do what I couldn't? That I failed you both? Please, don't do this," she sobbed. "I loved you more than anything," he whispered, his voice breaking. "But every time I look at you, I see him. I see what my failure cost." The space between them was no longer just a few inches of mattress. It was a canyon of shame, regret, and broken trust. They had saved their son, but in the process, they had lost each other. The next morning, as the sun painted the sky in soft hues of orange and pink, she packed her things quietly, a silent farewell to the life she once knew. Ademola didn't stop her. He just watched from the window, his heart a heavy stone in his chest, as her figure grew smaller and smaller down the dusty road, eventually swallowed by the morning fog. Time, like a tired old river, flowed on. Tobi grew into a fine young man. He was intelligent, strikingly handsome, but a certain hardness had settled in his eyes. He grew up believing a story pieced together from hushed whispers and half-truths, that his mother had abandoned them for another man, for a better life. The real reason was buried deep, twisted by years of resentment. Meanwhile, Morayo lived a solitary life in a small rented room at the edge of town. She earned her keep selling clothes at the market, each day a struggle for survival. Sometimes, her eyes would catch a glimpse of Ademola speeding by on his motorcycle. Their gazes would meet for a fleeting second before they both pretended not to notice, two ships passing in the night, haunted by the same storm. But when darkness fell, they would both lie awake, lost in memories of what once was, of a love they thought was eternal. Ademola never remarried. He kept her old shawl, the one she loved so much, folded neatly in a drawer. On lonely nights, he would unfold it, the fabric still holding a faint scent of her, and whisper into the silence, "I'm sorry, Morayo. I'm so sorry." Years turned into a decade. Tobi returned home, no longer a boy but a man, with his fiancée, BC, a woman with a gentle spirit and a kind smile. Their wedding was just 2 months away. Ademola's chest swelled with pride. His boy had made it. He had built a good life for himself. But news of the wedding traveled on the wind, reaching Morayo's lonely room. A mother's heart, no matter how broken, could not stay away. Dressed in a simple, faded gown, she walked to Ademola's house, each step a battle between fear and a desperate need to see her son, her heart hammered against her ribs. When Tobi opened the door, his welcoming smile vanished, replaced by a mask of stone. "What are you doing here?" he asked, his voice dripping with ice. I heard you're getting married," she said, her voice barely a whisper. "I just came to see you." He let out a short, bitter laugh. "See me? After everything you did? You have some nerve," he scoffed. "You ruined this family." BC, standing behind him, frowned in confusion. "Tobi, who is this?" He gestured dramatically. "This is my mother." "The woman who betrayed my father for money." Morayo's lips quivered. "That's not true, my son. Don't call me your son." He shouted, his face contorted with rage. "My father loved you. He gave you everything, but you chose another man over us. He's been alone all these years because of you." Tears, hot and stinging, spilled down her cheeks. "Tobi, please, just listen, get out," he yelled, pointing a trembling finger towards the road. "You're not my mother." In that moment, something inside Morayo snapped. Before she could stop herself, her hand flew, and the sharp sound of a slap echoed in the tense silence. "You foolish boy," she cried, her voice raw with years of pent-up pain. "Do you even know why I left? I did it for you. I did it to save your life." He froze, the sting on his cheek forgotten. "What? I sold myself to save you from death," she screamed, her entire body trembling with the force of her confession. "I carried that shame all by myself while you grew up hating me for it." BC gasped, her hands flying to her mouth in shock. The color drained from Tobi's face, his anger crumbling into disbelief. You did it? For me?" He whispered, the words barely audible. Morayo's tears flowed freely now, tears of grief, of relief, of a mother's unending love. "I would do it 1,000 times over," she wept, "if it meant keeping you alive." She turned and walked away, leaving a profound, deafening silence in her wake. That night, Tobi sat in his father's room, his body shaking uncontrollably. "Dad, is it true? What she said, did Mom really do that for me?" Ademola closed his eyes, a pained expression on his face. His voice was a fragile whisper. "Yes, she did. Then why? Why didn't you ever tell me?" Tobi cried, his voice breaking. "Because I was ashamed," Ademola confessed, his own voice cracking under the weight of his guilt. "I was a failure as a husband and a father. I couldn't protect her. I thought letting her go would ease the pain, but it only made everything so much worse." Tobi buried his face in his hands, his shoulders shaking with gut-wrenching sobs. "I've hated her for so long. I said such terrible things." Ademola placed a trembling hand on his son's shoulder. Son, sometimes love demands impossible, terrible things from us. Your mother carried a cross that no one should ever have to bear. That very night, guided by a new, painful understanding, Tobi and BC went to find Morayo. She opened the door, her eyes swollen and red from crying. Mother, Tobi's voice cracked. He fell to his knees before her, his pride shattered. I'm sorry. I have been such a fool. She covered her mouth, her own body trembling. Tobi, I judged you without knowing anything. You gave up everything for me. He took her worn hands in his and wept. Please, can you ever forgive me? She knelt down with him, her tears mingling with his. Oh, my son, you are my son. I forgave you a long, long time ago. Just then, a figure appeared in the doorway behind them. It was Ademola, his eyes wet with unshed tears. Morayo looked up, and her breath caught in her throat. Their gazes locked for the first time in so many years, bridging a chasm of pain and misunderstanding. I never stopped loving you, Morayo, Ademola said softly, his voice thick with emotion. I didn't know how to forgive myself. A faint, beautiful smile touched her lips. And I never stopped waiting for you. He reached out and took her hand. In that simple touch, the crushing weight of years of regret and sorrow finally lifted. Months later, at Tobi and Bissy's wedding, the hall was filled with joyous laughter and the sweet scent of roses and rice. Morayo and Ademola stood together, side by side, not as two broken people, but as one whole. As the newlyweds shared their first dance, Morayo leaned toward Ademola. We lost everything once, she whispered, but love found us again. Ademola smiled, his eyes glistening in the warm light. Love, he said, squeezing her hand, always finds its way home, and as they watched their son, their family, their future, bathed in happiness, the old wounds of the past finally began to fade, replaced by something stronger, something unbreakable. A love that, once scarred and shattered, had been miraculously reborn. Thank you so much for watching. If this story touched your heart, please don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more content that explores the power of love and forgiveness. We'll see you in the next video.